Okay, write a program to input marks in 7 different subjects and display whether the result is pass or fail. So in this particular program, what we have to do is we have to take marks, 7 marks. We have to take input for 7 different subjects, and we have to find out whether the person is pass or fail. So let's first of all do this program using sub procedure. Now let's declare sub result. Now marks, that is M1, M2, M3, M4, M5. Okay, M5 and M6 and M7. Now I'm using 7 different variables, numeric variables, to store marks for 7 different subjects. Okay, so write CLS and let's start taking input. Enter marks for FIR first subject. Now while taking input, you can even write enter marks for computer, enter marks for Nepali, and so on. Okay, but I'm using this one. So let's copy and paste all these things. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So these are the inputs. Now after taking input, what we do is we call. So let's call as well. Call result. And here what we'll do is we'll pass all these arguments, that is M1, M2, M3, M4, M5 till 7. So here also let me copy this and paste it over here. So now there are few changes that we have to make in message. Okay, first marks, let's make it, okay, first subject, second subject, third subject, fourth, fifth, sixth. I'm just writing number to save time. Okay, in exam what you have to do is you have to type the whole word, 6th, 7th, 8th, the whole word. Okay, now here also let me make some changes, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, here we are with our main module. So let's write end to mark the main module with. So we have our main module is all set. Now let's go towards the definition part. So definition starts with sub result and all the parameters. Okay, everything we have typed. Now let's go towards the definition part. And here what we have to do is we have to check whether all the marks are greater than the pass marks or not. And let's consider our pass marks to be 40. So in that case, what should happen is all the marks for different subjects has to be greater than or equals to 40. In that case only the student is pass. If he scores less than 40 in any of the subjects, then the student is considered as fail. So what we have to do is we have to check, and in order to check anything we use if statement, and our condition will look something like this, that is first marks, that is marks in first subject has to be greater than or equals to 40. And it's not just with one subject, we have to check for all the subjects. Okay, so we have to check for marks 2 also, and we have to check for marks 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for all the marks. And what we have to do is if we are checking condition in one statement, then we have to combine all the statements, and in order to combine we have either or and. Now let's talk about this condition. Now we have 7 different conditions in one statement and we are about to combine it. Now to combine we either use or we either use and. Now which one we have to use, let's discuss about that one. Now in order to be a student pass, what he has to do is he has to score marks 40 or greater than 40 in all the subjects. So he has to score 40 or greater than 40 in all the subjects. So in all the subject, so this condition, all the conditions that we have kept has to be true. And for that reason, we will have to use AND. So that's why we are combining all these conditions U with AND. Now let me just add in all the conditions. Marks 1, marks 2, marks 3, marks 4, marks 5, marks 6, 7. Okay. 2. Now let's write 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And at the end, what we write is, we write then, and this comes according to the syntax. So you can see our condition. Okay. So all the conditions has to be true, then only he is considered pass. If any one of the condition is false, then the whole condition becomes false, then he is considered as fail. So if this condition is true, then it will go to its true part, which is below if, and here what we have to do is we have to display your result is pass. Now if any one condition is false, then whole condition becomes false, then it will go to its false part, and in false part, what we'll display is, we'll display your result is fail. So this is what we have to do. Now one thing is remaining, that is closing of if, which is end if. So this is all we need to do using sub procedure. Let's check our answer. Now let's say that the student is passed. So as we can see, in all the subjects he has scored marks greater than or equals to 40. So in this case, his result is pass. Now let's consider another condition or another scenario where he has passed in 6 subjects, but he has failed in 1 subject. So in this kind of scenario, or in this context, he is failed because he has failed in one of the subjects. So here the output is your result is fail. So this is our program using sub procedure. Now the same program we will be doing with function procedure. And so far, if you have any problem, you can write me through in the chat section, okay? So that I can explain it again. So let's do the same program using function procedure, where we have to change this sub with function. Now, whenever we write program using function procedure, we have to talk about this $sign. And in this particular program, $sign is required or not, let's discuss. As we have already seen the output, and the output was your result is pass or your result is fail. It is either of the two. So in either cases, our output is in a string form. So whatever we are displaying output is a string value, and string value, if it is the output, then it will return the same. So this particular function will return a string value, hence $sign is required. So we are writing $sign. So parameters, everything is okay. Now let me replace this with comma. So these are the parameters. Now we need to take input. CLS is the same, input is also the same. Now we have to call the function procedure, and to call we use print keyword. And let's talk about the message. And as you have already guessed, message is also not required, because whatever the value function returns as returns, that is a message itself. It will return your result is pass. It is a message. If it returns your result is fail, it is also a message. So we do not need to write any message over here, but what we need to write is the $sign, because the function is returning a string value, and our arguments M1, M2, M3, M4, M5, M6, M7, they are all same. Let's move towards the definition part. So there is some error over here. And okay, because this is already been created, let me delete this. Okay, now what I have to do is I have to write down the definition, which is function result dollar, and I have to write down the parameters, and the parameters are M1, M2, M3, M4, M5, M6, and M7. Okay. Now, again, here what I have to do is I have to check. So let's check if marks, if M1 is greater than or equals to 40, and we have to check for all this. Okay. So M1, M2, M3, M4, M5, M6, M7. So let me just correct my variables. M4, M5, here we have M6, and here is M7, and at the end we require them. So in this, what we have to do is, this is a function, so we have to return a value. So to return, we use result dollar equals to, then we write your result is pass. Your result is pass. And if the condition is false, then it will go to its false part, which is below else. And below else, what will display or what will return is, we will return your result is fail. So let's mark the end of if with end if. Now let's run our program. So let's make everybody pass. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So he is passed. Now let's say fail. Suppose he has passed in all the 6 subjects except for the last one. He has failed. So altogether his result is fail. So your result is fail. This as well. Okay. So what I'll do is I will not write down the question. I'll simply start writing the programs, and we will do this program using function procedure. So as usual, we need to have declare keyword, not sub, but we will be doing this with function procedure, PSN. Now this is the name of the function. And whenever we write programs using function procedure, now there is something known as $sign. So we have to figure out whether $sign is required in this program or not. Now, perfect square number, what we do is we take one number as an input and display whether it is a perfect square number or not. So for that, what we'll do is we will check the number and we will display. If it is a perfect square number, then we will display it is a perfect square number. If it is not a perfect square number, then we will display it is not a perfect square number. So in either of the case, the value that we are trying to display is a string value, and it is the string value that the function is going to return. Hence, $sign is required. Now we need a parameter. Let's store the parameter in n. Now CLS, now we take input. So here is our input. Enter any number. So n. Now what we do is we have to call the function procedure, and in order to call the function procedure, we use print keyword, and after print we write message. But in this particular program, message is not required, because whatever value the program or the function is returning, that is itself a message. So message is not required in this program. So simply we will call the function procedure, and for that we have already written print. Now it is only, now we just need to write down the name of the function procedure, which is PSN dollar, and the argument n. So after this, we end our main module with n. So basically this is our main module. Now we will move towards its definition part. And this is our definition part, PSN dollar. And let's write n over here. So here we are with our definition part. So in perfect, okay, let me first talk about this perfect square number. Now, perfect square number are those numbers which are formed from the multiplication of the same number, like 5 into 5, it is 25. So this is a perfect square number. Suppose 4 into 4, it is 16, and so on. Okay, these kind of numbers are said to be perfect square numbers. You can suppose, if you take example of 100, 100 is formed from the multiplication of 10 and 10. So these kind of numbers are said to be perfect square numbers. So in our program, what we will do is, first of all, we will take out the square root of the number that the user has supplied, and that number we all know is stored in variable n, which is a parameter. And once after we take out the square root, then we will pass the square root value in int function. And after the int function returns a value, we will compare those two values. And if those two values are equal, we will display it is a perfect square number, else it is not a perfect square number. That's what we will be doing. So let's start. So first let's square it. So square root, for square root I'm using variable s, and there is a function to calculate square root, which is sqr. Pass the value which is n, and whatever square root is evaluated from this function, that will be stored in s. Now the next step is to pass the value of s, or pass this variable s in int function, and int function will return a integer, which we have already discussed. So to store that integer, I am using variable I is equals to int s. Now I'll first complete the program. Okay, first of all, I'll complete the program, then I will explain why we are doing all these things. Okay, so after this, our next step is to compare these two values, square root value, which is stored in s, and the value returned by int function, which is stored in I. Let's compare with if keyword. So if s is equals to I, okay, if s is equals to I, then now if these two values are equal, then it is a perfect square number. So that's what we have to return. So in order to return anything, we use function name at the beginning, then we return the value. So the value that has to be returned is this one. It is a perfect square number. This is the value that has to be returned. Now, if this particular condition is false, let's say that if this condition is false, then we know that it is not a perfect square number. So in that case, we will return it is not a perfect square number. Now, this is all we need to do in this program. So let's mark the end of if with end if. So this is, we have already done this one. So now let's run our program and let's check the output. So here is our output screen. Now let's first of all type in one perfect square number, which is 100. So 100 is a perfect square number. So our output is the same, that is, it is a perfect square number. Now let's take example for another number. Let's say 169. It is also a perfect square number because 13 multiplied with 13 will give 169. Now let's move towards another value, which is not a perfect square number. 70 is not a perfect square number. So it is displaying it is not a perfect square number. So let's see how this program actually works. Okay. Now, first of all, let's take one example. Now, suppose user types 100. So user types 100. Now, actually, it comes from the main module where this message is displayed. Let's say user typed 100. 100 will be stored in this n. And while calling the function from here, the value 100 is passed, and whatever value is passed, it will go to the definition part. Here is our definition part, and this particular n parameter will hold 100. So eventually we have 100 in n. Okay. Now after this, what we have done is we have taken the square root. So when we take out the square root of 100, we get 10, and 10, whatever the value is returned from the sqr function, it will be stored in s. So s will hold value 10. I hope there is no confusion so far. Now, after this, now what is happening in this line is the value of s has been passed in int. So s holds value 10 and 10 is passed in int function. And we have already discussed about this one, that whatever value we pass in int function, if it is an integer value, then it will return the same value. And right now our value that we are passing is an integer value, which is 10. So 10 is passed over here, and integer value will, int function will return the same, that is 10 will be returned, and the returned value will be stored in I. So I will hold value 10. Okay, so far we have got this much. Now now this line will get executed, and here s and I are being compared. S is also 10, I is also 10, so both are same, hence our condition is true, and it will display, it will not display from here, but it will return it is a perfect square number. And this value will be returned to this part, and from here it will be printed it is a perfect square number. Okay, now we have already talked about perfect square number. Now let's talk about non-perfect square number. Now let's say one value, that is 70. Now let's say 70. Now whenever user types 70, from the main module, value will come to the definition part, and here n will hold value 70. Okay, now let's go to this line. Now here value of 70 will be replaced in place of n. So here 70, square root of 70 will be calculated. Now let's see what is the square root of 70. Okay, here we are with our calculator. Now 70. Now let's find out the square root of 70. Square root of 70 is this, 8.366. Okay, now there are many digits over here, but we'll just consider 8.3666. Okay, this is the value. So let's write this value in our editor. Okay, here is our QBasic screen. So square root is 8.3666 and so on. So that value is not required. So whenever we take out square root of 70, we got this value, and this value will be stored in S. Okay, from here. Now this value, what we'll do is, this value we are transferring it into int function. So whenever we pass in int function, now this time it is not an integer value, it is a decimal value. So whenever int function gets a decimal value, what it will do is it will return an integer. Int function always returns an integer value. So what kind of integer value it will return? It will return the greatest integer but less than this particular value. Okay, greatest integer value less than this value which is being passed. This is the value that is being passed, and the integer value that will be returned is the value which is the greatest but less than this one, just less than this integer value, which is 8. So 8 will be stored. It will be returned by the function int and will be stored in variable I. Now after this, again condition checking will take place. Now this time we have two different numbers in two variables. S has this value and I has 8. So these two values are not equal. So this condition will be false. Since this condition is false, it will go to its false part, and it is not a perfect square number. This will be returned, and whatever is returned, it will be returned to the main module, and from here it will get printed. So this is about not a perfect square number. This is about the perfect square number program. So, okay, let me quickly, I hope there is no confusion. If you have any confusion, do write in the chat section, or you can unmute yourself and you can ask. Okay. Okay, so far I haven't received any messages in the chat. So what I'll do is I'll simply convert this particular program using sub procedure, and we will continue with our new chapter. So let me quickly convert this one. So function, we have to replace with sub. And whenever we are writing program using sub procedure, $sign is not required at all. So let's remove, I've removed $sign. Here also we need to remove. Now another change will happen over here. Instead of print, we have to call sub procedure using call keyword. So our calling part is also over. So this is all in our main module. Now let's go towards the definition part. So here is our definition. So let's edit our definition as well. Replace function with sub, remove $sign. Okay, I'll just remove this values also. Okay, let me just clear this. Okay, now these two statements are same because we have to take out the square root, then we have to pass the square root value in int function. So our condition checking is also the same. The only difference is in this particular statement. Here we are returning the value, but in the case of sub procedure, we have to print in the definition itself. So instead of returning, what we'll do is we'll print. So in order to print, we'll be using print keyword. It's quite simple. So okay, let me simply write this question mark. Okay, here we are with our program using sub procedure. So let's run and check our answer. So 56. So 56, it is not a perfect square number. Now let's go for one perfect square number, 100 one more time, and it is a perfect square number. So this is the program for perfect square number using sub procedure and function.
Thank you so much for watching. Please do like my video so that I get motivated to create more of these videos. We would appreciate if you would share this video with your friends. And if you have any queries and suggestions, let me know through the comment section. Lastly, please do subscribe my channel and press the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. Thank you.